I wrote a framework for understanding poverty, a cognitive approach for educators, policymakers, employers, and service providers by Ruby K. Payne, PhD. Dr. Payne lays out her intent for the book early on, says that her purpose is to impact opportunities of students from low-income backgrounds by naming the experience of generational poverty, identifying tools necessary to become educated, providing intervention strategies, increasing intergenerational transfer of knowledge, understanding the thinking in generational poverty, and helping students transition to the decontextualized world of school and work. Her book is divided essentially into three parts. The first deals with situated learning, meaning the resources, the language, and the hidden rules that our students deal with. The second is the emotional resources, the people in their lives, the role models, support systems, and relationships they have. And lastly, how this impacts their classroom experience, be it through discipline, instruction, or achievement. First, in situated learning, dealing with resources, people from middle and upper class backgrounds tend to think of poverty as being a financial situation. But Dr. Payne says that the reality is that financial resources don't explain the achievement gap or the gap in success. And she talks about many different kinds of resources such as emotional, physical, financial, spiritual. And she says that emotional resources, when lacking or absent, almost guarantee the slide into poverty. And the way the language our students use also informs their experience. She talks about many different kinds of register, a formal register, a casual register. There's 4 total, but our students generally hear casual register at home, which is conversational, less academic. And students from middle and upper class backgrounds hear formal register at home. Our students don't. And this means that students from lower class backgrounds generally can't even use formal register. And formal register is professional language. It is what they need to succeed on standardized tests or in a job interview. And so when we as teachers are thinking about this gap for our students, we need to seek to add to their language, not to correct it. Casual register is used by everyone, but our students don't have the ability to use formal register. And so we as educators need to directly teach our students how to use the formal register. This is called code switching, so that our students know casual register is good at home. This behavior is good at home. But here at school, you need to use formal register. You need to use these behaviors. And for these students, learning formal register is like learning a new language. And so if I think about learning French, if I could go to France and be immersed in the language, I could pick it up pretty quickly. But if I can't do that, I need to be taught. I need someone to explain the rules and how to use it and let me practice. And that's what we need to do for our students. They aren't immersed in formal register at home. And so we need to directly teach them, this is how you use it. These are the rules. This is the vocabulary. Let's practice using this language here in the classroom because it's going to help you succeed in the future. Next, she moves to emotional resources, one of these being role models. Often students from lower class backgrounds may not have an appropriate role model at home, or they see very extreme behaviors. And so they move to the opposite end and they stop seeing the socially accepted responses as normal or even as an option. And so when they don't have appropriate role models, they have to guess at normal and they are just responding to their environment. And so the benefits of having a role model is that it builds self-esteem in our students, which has its own set of benefits. And it helps them build boundaries, both physical and emotional, that will help them get jobs and succeed in school. And finally, it allows them to hear affirmations. One study that Payne cites says that children in lower class backgrounds hear 2 negative comments for every 1 positive, where students in middle and upper class backgrounds hear 5 or 6 positive comments for every 1 negative comment. And so having a positive role model who gives them affirmations and teaches them positive self-talk is going to be a huge resource for our students, because otherwise they fall into this, it's too hard, I can't do this, I need to quit now. Where if they have these affirmations, they can push through and they can succeed. They also need support systems outside of their role models. That is, families, schools, church, other activities, teams. And the benefits of having an extensive support system is that it helps them develop coping strategies. They get a break from having to deal with it all on their own. And it gives them more ways, more outlets for their energy or their frustration. It gives them resources to know how to deal with different situations they're facing. It gives them options for when they are facing a conflict. They might not have a strong role model, but with the strong support system, they can see that these people are reacting differently. Even as educated adults, we go to other adults and say, what do you think about this situation? Is there something I'm not considering? And having a support system gives our students that. It gives them the opportunity to explore other options, and it gives them know-how. When they're trying to do their homework that they don't understand, they need someone there who can help them, and their parents or their grandparents may not be able to. And so having a strong support system increases the likelihood that they have someone there to help them. If they want to go to college, they need someone who knows about the admission process and what they need to do to get in. That know-how helps them move forward towards their goals. Finally, the impact in the classroom, particularly in discipline. And I've seen this in my own classroom. This quote really stood out to me from the whole book. Many educational problems that can be understood through the lens of poverty come to light as discipline or classroom management issues. And I saw that this year. It's my first year teaching, and I saw students acting out, or I saw students defying me. And then when I met with their parents, or when I talked to other teachers about their background, I understood that those responses or those issues are coming from somewhere else. They're coming from their upbringing, or they're coming from what these students are in day to day. And so that is why Dr. Payne's book is so important. That is why we need to understand generational poverty, because we cannot help our students if we don't understand where they're coming from. And so she talks about discipline and the difference in discipline between a lower class background and a middle or upper class background. She says in a middle and upper class background, discipline is designed to teach. And I can think about that. I was raised in a middle class background, and I remember hearing, this is a learning opportunity, and learning what I needed to do differently. But in a lower class background, Dr. Payne says that discipline is designed to punish and to seek forgiveness. And so when thinking about discipline in our classrooms, we need to be careful that we are not there to punish our students. We're there to teach our students, even when it comes to discipline. And one way to do that is by behavior analysis. She encourages having students analyze their own behavior and their response. There's a form in her book that has the students say their name, the issue, the behavior, and then give 4 ways they could have responded differently. And she says that is what students from lower class backgrounds struggle with most. Talked earlier in role models and support systems about having options when it comes to conflict. And so these students don't see the options. And so having them step back and say, maybe I could have responded differently. Maybe I could have done this instead, is a big learning moment and a big cognitive skill that our students need to learn that they don't come to school with already. And then finally, with discipline, she talks about the different voices that everyone has. There's a child's voice, which is the whiny, playing the victim kind of voice, the parent voice, which when it comes to conflict is the very punitive voice, and the adult voice, which is the voice of reason, asking questions, trying to understand. When children are forced into adult roles too early, they often don't develop the adult voice, they only develop the parent voice. And so when it comes to conflict, they either want to play the victim or they want to be angry. And so if educators come at them in a parent voice, coming to punish and tell them what they did wrong, they're either going to respond in a parent voice, which is going to be a fight or sarcastic, or in a child's voice, where they're going to cry and throw a fit. So Dr. Payne talks about using discipline as a teaching moment, modeling the adult voice and directly teaching our students how to use an adult voice as well, so that they have negotiating skills, so that they can analyze the situation and they can advocate for themselves. So reflecting on how well she achieved her purpose in this book, I think Dr. Payne hit 5 out of her 6 goals remarkably well. I think she missed increasing intergenerational transfer of knowledge. Now, she talks about the thinking in generational poverty and that intergenerational impact, that there's a sort of incestuous thinking, that if one generation is uneducated or thinks one way about something, that trickles down because there is a physical kind of isolation as well in generational poverty. But she fails to give real strategies to deal with this and to increase the intergenerational transfer of knowledge. She talks about the maternal grandfather's job being a predictor of the child's success up through 3rd grade, I believe, but does not talk about how to counter that impact if the child's maternal grandfather does not have a highly educated job. I think one she hits very well and that stood out to me the most is helping students transition to the decontextualized world of school and work. At home, they have context for their behavior, and they behave certain ways because it's what they've learned or it's what's going on around them. But at school, it's decontextualized. They have to fit with the social norms. And so teaching them to code switch, direct teaching hidden rules. There are hidden rules of different classes, just like there are rules different races and genders. This is true of social classes. And breaking those rules can prevent you from being able to move into another class. And so teaching our students those is important. The if-then affirmations I talked about with mentors is incredibly important. Setting boundaries. And then one of the 4 things she says is the most important in helping students transition out of generational poverty is creating a future story. By that she means, where do you want to be in 5 years? What do you want to do with your life? And instead of pushing a story on our students that you need to go to college or you need to get this kind of job, letting them say, this is what I'm interested in and this is what I want to do, and supporting them in that, helping them create this story, and then giving them the tools and the space to go after that dream is one thing that is huge in helping our students transition out of poverty. So thinking about my own classroom management after reading this book, Dr. Payne talks about not bringing a middle-class mindset, that I have different expectations coming from a middle-class background than my students and their parents do. And so creating a space where my students and I and the parents and I can talk about our expectations and set a norm for us that does not assume anything of the other parties is something that I did not do this year. I did not expect to teach my students formal register. I did not expect to teach any of these things. But coming in next year without that middle class mindset and being ready to create a space and set our own norms, I think is going to be probably the biggest and most effective change in my classroom management system. Teaching behaviors like teaching negotiation skills. I talk about that next, the language of negotiation. Our students need to be able to advocate for themselves, and I wasn't prepared to do that. I came in with punishments saying, I want to hear your side of it, but here's your punishment regardless of what you tell me. But taking this time, instead of just handing out punishments, to say, advocate for yourself. And here's an effective way to do that. Here are the skills you need to advocate for yourself. Here are the skills you need to do better next time. And finally, reframing. Dr. Payne gives a story of a football coach who told a player to do push-ups for a minute, and he refused and had to go to detention for 45 minutes. The boy came back the next day, and the coach said, I don't understand why you turned down 1 minute for 45. The boy didn't understand, and the coach said, you could have been done in 1 minute, but you chose to sit in detention. The boy came back later and said, I'll take the push-ups next time. So teaching our students how to think differently and how to approach situations differently is not something I was prepared to do. I imposed my framework on them, and I think allowing them space to consider their own framework and to think about things from different angles and teaching them how to think about things differently is also going to be a big change that needs to be made in my own classroom management. Thank you.